Hello, I'm back with another cost savings tip. This one is a couple things. One, it's geared towards industrial customers. So fair warning, this is going to be heavily oriented towards industrial companies who run manufacturing operations. Number two, this one's also going to be oriented towards startup. So as you begin operations again, we want to talk about how you have a best practice around starting up your equipment and how you can save cost in doing that. Before I jump into that best practice, I want to take a step back and talk about how electricity bills work. So generally there's three components to your electricity bill. One is your fixed cost, and that's generally stuff like cost for service. That's the privilege of buying electricity from the utility. Number two, this is usually the largest cost, which is your consumption. How many kilowatt hours did you use? How much electricity did you use? They'll bill you on that. The third piece is very common for industrial customers, and that is a demand charge. And the demand charge isn't so much looking at how much you used over the course of the month, but instead how much you used over the course of generally a 15-minute interval. So what they're saying is, we look at all the 15-minute intervals across the month and which one did you consume the most power and have the most demand. And we're gonna bill you based on that high demand. So again, in many cases, you'll get a demand charge as well. And the reason why they bill you on this is because the utility company has to build out that much infrastructure to deliver the electricity to your facility. Now, we can get into some unique situations where many utility companies won't just bill you for your high demand for that month, but will actually bill you for the highest demand over the last 12 months. So your peak demand can stay with you for a while and results in significant costs. And that's why I want to talk to you today about this idea of having a best practice associated with restarting your idle facility. Probably the biggest industry to focus on this is organizations with electric ovens. And the reason why is because an electric oven that has been shut down is at ambient temperature, in many cases has to get up to thousands of degrees. That means it will take, in some cases, over 24 hours worth of full load on that oven to get up to temperature. And so you have that much demand throughout the entire 24 hours. And what happens is if you turn on all your ovens at the same time and you run them all with that demand as well as fire on other pieces of equipment, you're gonna set a really, really high demand relative to what you usually set. And again, that will either result in significant charges for that month, or it could result in significant charges for the year, depending on the utility. So a best practice I would say is, I wouldn't be so concerned about things like, a press, because once you fire it up and you get the flywheel running, it's gonna take a little bit of time, but that's maybe a 1 to 5 to at most 10 minutes worth of draw from a demand standpoint before you're back to normal operations. I would focus on the ovens. What I would do is before you even begin operating your plant, get the ovens up to temperature. Don't fire them all on at the same time. I would sequence them so that you have one oven turned on. Once it's up to temperature, fire on the next and the next and the next. And then once they're all up to temperature and they're just maintaining, then you can begin to start up the rest of your facility. In other facilities, I would recommend making sure that is that first day you're back to work, don't start production on all lines at the same time. Maybe spread that out from over 2 or 3 hours. So if you usually start at 7, start some stuff up at 6:30 and then have the last lines running by 8:30 or 9. Again, you can spread out the demand. I'll finish with a story of why this is so important. We had a client a couple of years ago who was in the automotive industry. They had a massive power outage and they lost power for well over 36 hours. And they ended up having to shut their ovens down, and they just did a maintenance on them anyways while the power was out. So the ovens were completely down in temperature, back to ambient. And they fired all the ovens up at the same time, and unbeknownst to them, they set a massive demand peak for that month. And they were actually in consumers energy territory, which has the yearly charge as well. So what happened is they incurred about a $15,000 extra charge for the month in demand relative to other months. But the biggest problem was they had about $10,000 worth of demand charges that ended up being incurred over the next 12 months because that peak demand, when they fired all those ovens on at the same time, hung with them for that whole time. So again, I would encourage you, have a plan around how you're gonna turn your facility on. Make sure you're not turning too many things on at the same time, and this will help you avoid these demand charges. Obviously, make sure that you have demand charges and you understand your electricity bills as well. If you have any questions around your electric bill or how you can best start up your facility, don't hesitate to reach out to me or somebody at Foresight. We'd love to talk to you about some strategies around that. As usual, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.